Check, check. Check, check. You're good.
When did you serve?
Tommy's about to light up.
Okay, when did you serve?
I just came out in August.
Okay, well, you've probably heard me speak before.
I have.
Okay, well, again, this will be a you want to help me? You want to help give it?
I just don't want to miss anything.
Okay, well, I think if you,
I was telling Vicki, I was in 24 years, I was never down here for anything.
Good for
My
you.
council wasn't, my police were not, so.
Good.
it sounds like you're probably doing okay then. Okay, great, and you've got my phone?
I do.
Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Today is the lobbyist training. This will be our second training that we've done this year, and we're glad to have you with us. I think we've got about 40 who are attending remotely. We've got a couple who are here in the room with us. For those of you who are attending remotely, remember that there is a number that we have provided to you or will provide to you if you have any questions. What we ask you to do is please text them to that number, and then at the appropriate time in the presentation, we will answer those questions if they have not already been answered previously. So please keep up with that number, and just remember that we'll answer those questions at the conclusion probably of the presentation. The presentation will take about an hour, probably a little bit less than that, and we will go ahead and get started. This is the number that you should use. I'll give you just a second to write it down if you need to, but this is the number where you should text your questions.
Something's happening and I forgot the code. I don't know why I don't know the code, but there's an issue there's an error message.
Okay, hang on, because I've changed my code.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm receiving an error message on the link and the YouTube channel that video is restricted. I'm just announcing that out loud. I can't actually fix it.
Okay. Apparently there are some technical difficulties with some of the presentation, and so I'm going to give it just a minute to see if
Can you write down?
Vicki has a resolution. Write down. Oh,
So I can get it.
sure. You are most welcome. It's, you are in an exalted position knowing that.
Yes, I am.
You know that, right?
Yep.
Okay. Would you text that person back and ask if it's been resolved? Because I don't know if it's system-wide. Surely we'd be getting more texts if... Apparently there was an error with one of the participants, and I'm making sure it's not a problem for everyone. It's an awfully long text message for a very quick question.
I already asked the questions. I'm giving additional information about it.
Okay, you haven't gotten a response?
I have not. I think you should carry on.
Okay, I think I will. All right, what we go over today is the Alabama Ethics Act, and what we tell you today is the floor, not the ceiling. And clearly what I mean by that is you are certainly able to go above and beyond what these bare minimum ethical requirements are, and we certainly encourage you to do that. Our commission is made up of 5 people, and the membership of that commission changes annually, usually. It's made up of appointments from the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker of the House, and each one of our members serves a staggered 5-year term. Currently, our chairman is Beverly Brady. She's the person on the screen behind me. She is from Auburn, Alabama. She's a lawyer.
Some people have access and some people do not. I don't know why.
Maybe their browser.
Oh, it's not.
And why is this not advancing? That is Beverly Brady.
This is going to be.
Okay. Our vice chair this year is John Plunk. He's a lawyer from Athens, Alabama. Justice Lynn Stewart is on our commission. She's former Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. Stan McDonald is a lawyer from Huntsville, Alabama, and he's on our commission. Has been now serving his 3rd year on the commission. And then our newest commissioner is General Ed Crowell from Montgomery. He's a retired brigadier general, worked for a defense contractor, for a military contractor after he left the military. He's previously served on the commission, so this is his second time to serve on the Ethics Commission. So if any of you have been around the commission for a number of years, he may be a bit of a familiar face to you. He's the only non-lawyer on the commission as well. And that's who I work for. I manage a staff of 15 people, but those are our employers. One of the chief functions of our office is to give advice and to interpret the Alabama Ethics Act really on your behalf. So if you have questions about whether any conduct is allowed or is not allowed under the Ethics Act, you can ask for our opinion about that, and we can give it to you through either a formal opinion or an informal opinion. Far and away, most of what we do is through informal opinions. That's the staff opinion given in writing about whether certain conduct is allowed or prohibited under the Ethics Act. As you might expect, most of the questions we get asked have either been answered by us previously through a formal opinion, or they're readily apparent from the text of the Alabama Code. So most of the questions that we get are pretty easy reaches, and so we give those through informal opinions. However, if we have not answered the question formally before, or the answer cannot be derived from the clear language of the code, then what we will do is issue a formal advisory opinion that is more interpretive and interprets what the requirements are under the Ethics Act. A formal advisory opinion gives you protection from prosecution if you receive one, in much the same way that an advisory opinion from the Attorney General's office likewise gives protection to those who request an opinion from them. The key feature of a formal advisory opinion for purposes of legal protection, however, is that you have to have given us the correct facts, and you have to rely on the opinion within the four corners of the document that we give you. But if you do that, then you do get the legal protection. We give about 1,000 informal opinions a year. We give much fewer formal opinions. In a good year, we'll give maybe 25 to 30 formal opinions, and that would be a very busy year. There have been some years that we've given as little as 2 formal advisory opinions. For purposes of lobbying, you probably will not request a formal advisory opinion from us because most of your questions are going to turn on what you can do as a lobbyist in terms of events. And those are easy for us to answer without giving you a formal opinion describing what to do, because the code specifically sets out what you can and can't do. We did have a formal advisory opinion that a business that employs lobbyists, or an association rather that employs lobbyists, asked us to issue, and it had to do with how you report certain expenditures when they're shared among a number of different groups, and that's something we had not answered before. And Cynthia will talk about that opinion specifically later on this afternoon. But it was that may be one of the few opinions that we've given to lobbyists. We have given some opinions to lobbyists about what qualifies as lobbying, whether Alabama has a de minimis rule for lobbying. In other words, if you only spend a certain amount of your time being paid to lobby, whether that makes you a lobbyist. The answer is in Alabama, yes. If you're paid to lobby, you're a lobbyist regardless of how much you do it. But in some places, it's a little bit different, and so that's why that question was asked. But most of your interaction with our office will be through your contacts with Vicki Manning, who is currently our lobbyist liaison. And you'll be dealing with reporting requirements directly with her, and you'll be dealing with us on the events that you're wanting to sponsor, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay.
Good. The person's good.
Person's good? Okay, good. I'm glad. I like it when they're good. Our Ethics Act is a criminal act, and you should know that violations of the Ethics Act, if done intentionally, are Class B felonies. Other violations of our act are misdemeanors. The only reason you need to know this is that there are specific provisions that say that you can't offer certain things to public officials. You can't offer them what's called a thing of value, and you can't offer it to members of their family either. And so if you were to do that, you could be in violation of the act. There's a lot that's involved in that process. However, if you were to violate that section, both you and the person who receives it could be punished criminally under the Act as the Act provides. So with the commission, what does that process look like? It starts with a written complaint. We can only accept written complaints. They have to be verified as coming from the person who files it, and they have to be supported by credible and verifiable information. We have to resolve those complaints within 180 days of our receipt. Our commission can grant us an additional extension of 180 days to conclude the matter. Most of our cases are resolved within 180 days. If our investigator, our assistant general counsel, our general counsel, and then ultimately me review a case and determine that it is supported by evidence and likely presents a violation of the Act, we will present that to our commissioners who sit as a grand jury of sorts. They will weigh the evidence, and if they likewise conclude that there is more likely than not a violation of the ethics laws, then they will refer it either to the appropriate district attorney in the jurisdiction where the offense occurred, or they'll refer it to the Attorney General of Alabama. And then once one of those offices gets the complaint, then they determine what to do with it. They can investigate it, they can drop it, they can otherwise resolve it as they're allowed to do under the criminal code. So that's how our cases proceed. Now, we do have the ability to issue fines. We can issue fines against public officials in the state up to $6,000 if the gain or loss in the case does not exceed $1,500. And we issue a lot of fines through the commission, mainly to public employees. But if we're talking about what the enforcement mechanism is under the code given to us, fining is a substantial part of what we do. So that's a general overview of what enforcement looks like with the commission and under the Ethics Act. Overall theme of our act is that a public official or public employee cannot use their position in a way to benefit themselves, their family, or a business they're associated with. Prohibitions for y'all, however, is what I just mentioned a little bit ago, is that you cannot offer or provide a thing of value to a public official, a public employee, or a member of their family. And you can't give anything to a public official or a public employee in order to corruptly influence their official action. In very simple terms, what that means is you can't just pay money to a public official to have them officially act in a certain way, to vote a certain way, to approve any certain action that they would not have otherwise done in the normal course of their official duties. That rarely happens, or it certainly rarely happens in a way that we ever find out about. The offering of a thing of value, however, if you start out with the general prohibition of that, that occurs a good bit of the time if you looked at a strict application of that prohibition. Now, the thing of value is defined as any gift, benefit, favor, service, gratuity, tickets, and as we all know, throughout any legislative session, there are any number of quote, technical things of value that are given to public officials, legislative receptions, et cetera. Fortunately for y'all, there are 18 exceptions to the definition of thing of value that include things like legislative receptions, educational functions, widely attended events. So pretty much everything that you are going to want to do as a lobbyist, either on your own or in conjunction with other lobbyists or with associations. It might be the association that employs you, or it might be an association that does similar work to what you do. You may all get together and host a certain function for legislators. All of that is allowed under the Act. And as a portion of that event, you can also give refreshments. You can, in certain circumstances, cover their rooms. There are additional items of hospitality that you can give them. And fortunately for you, again, there's a good record of what is allowed and what is not, directly accessible by you as well as the public on our website. If you go to our website and you look under our pre-certification banner, you can see events that we have approved in the past, and you can also see the letter that either the lobbyist or the company that employs the lobbyist sent to us requesting permission. And so I offer that to you as a guide for how you can structure your events. You can see what other folks have done, and you can see the questions we've asked, and you can see what we've approved. And so I think it's a pretty good shortcut for you. If you have specific questions about what you can and can't do, that would be a great thing to ask us to give you in an informal opinion. Occasionally, some unique situations will present themselves, and one that comes to mind is when we had, periodically, when we have companies that are locating in Alabama, and they may be from Asia, they may be from other foreign countries, and there may be customs in those foreign countries about what you do in business or in dealing with governmental actors. And often that will include bringing some gift. It may be on behalf of an auto supplier or a new auto manufacturer or any number of other companies that might choose to locate here and employ thousands of people in Alabama. And so we've been asked the question of whether those gifts can be given as part of the delegation's visit to the state. And those can present unique challenges at times because some of the gifts might be quite nice. There is a specific provision within our Act that says promotional items are allowed, or items that have little intrinsic value. And often these gifts will have some kind of emblem on them that is tied to the manufacturer that really wouldn't have much market value if you were to go out and try to sell it. But they might cost more than the $25 that most folks use as a good guide to what is allowed. And so if you have a situation like that, just know that you can ask us about it, and we will look at each of these on a case-by-case basis. Generally, there is a good answer that we can give you about how to handle it. And in the event that a delegation wants to bring something that is quite nice to the state, what we have routinely told the public officials in that situation is that what is clear is that you cannot convert that gift to your own personal use. You can't take it home. But what you can do is keep it in your office, and if it stays with the office long after you're gone, it really becomes a gift to the state, not to the public official himself or herself. But we wouldn't be able to tell you that if you didn't engage in some kind of dialogue with us about it. So please do that. It can start with Vicki. We encourage you to call Vicki. She loves talking to you. She really does. I'm not just saying that because I expect her to do it. She actually does like talking to you, and she's really good and very helpful. And I encourage you to go to her as often as you possibly can. Where y'all are concerned and with your reporting, the main thing we want you to not do is guess about what the answer is. We want you to ask us. We want you to tell us if you have reported something incorrectly. We want to give you an opportunity to correct it and get it right. The last thing we want you to do is to not disclose what you should disclose because you're afraid you're going to get in trouble for having done it incorrectly the first time. So please keep dialogue up with our office. And I have yet to talk to a lobbyist who did not feel that Vicki was somebody they could really trust in these situations. So I pass that on to you again. But anyway, since we're on this issue of thing of value and what's prohibited, just remember that most of what you're going to want to do and what is typically done is allowed under the Ethics Act. What you can't be asked for, though, is you cannot, as the lobbyist, be directly solicited for anything, whether it's a thing of value or not, except a campaign contribution. So under the Act, it is a violation of the Act for somebody to ask you to help them out financially with something as a lobbyist. They cannot make special requests of you because this section says that you can't be solicited for anything, whether it's a thing of value or not. You can offer things to them. They can't ask you for things. And that's a very fine distinction. However, it is one of the clearest provisions in our Act. The only thing you can be solicited for is a campaign contribution. Everybody has the $25 figure bumping around in their head, whether you have gone through lobbyist training or not. It's pretty much well ingrained in anybody who deals with state government that there is something magical about the $25 number. The reason that it has that perception is that de minimis is defined in our code as anything less than $25. So I think most people, that's kind of their shorthand guide to ethics compliance, is they keep anything under $25. And that's actually a pretty good approach. But you should also know that there are allowances that go above the $25 cutoff that you are equally allowed to take advantage of. One is a meal allowance that you as lobbyists have. It is separate and apart from every other exception that you have. You have a $25 per meal, 150 annual cap on what you can provide for meals for public officials. Your principal can spend $50 an occasion with an annual cap of $250. It's not a great deal of money, but it is something. You can't combine those two together and each at the same time offer $75 per occasion. But you do have those, that exception under the code that allows you to spend specifically for food over and above what you're allowed to spend on other events. For educational functions, widely attended events, there is no limit on what you can spend in terms of food. You're not bound by the $25 limit for those. So at this point, any questions about the events or the allowances or any of those exceptions? And I'm asking for those online too.
I have had a request that you not stand directly in front of the screen because you're disrupting the text. They cannot read the text.
My big old head's blocking it?
Yeah,
Okay. When were you told
I
that?
think about 60 seconds ago.
60 seconds ago?
I was waiting on a break.
Okay, you can just interrupt me.
I know.
I will.
There's going to be a pause.
Can they still see me? Am I still on the screen?
You are.
Okay, so this is a safe space? Okay, I backed up the screen because my big head was blocking the text. For whoever sent that in, thank you for that. Can you see it better now?
I have had no response, but I'm assuming so because
Well-
I can see the screen and I'm looking at what they're looking at.
Okay. All right, well, I have a tendency to kind of wander, so if I wander back in front of it, just knock me back. Okay, but this is, I think I blocked this screen, so I'll give you a second on that. Remember de minimis, cut off for that. Definition of thing of value I've gone over. I will come back and talk to you in a few more minutes. This point, I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia Ralston to pick up specifically with the issues that I went over in a very general fashion just a second ago.
I don't need it. I've got mine.
Yeah, you need to advance for that.
Hello. I'm going to try not to stand in front of the screen. Am I good? Austin? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia Ralston, I'm the General Counsel. And Tom talked a little bit about pre-certifications. And back in front of the screen. And he talked a little bit about pre-certifications, but let me tell you why that matters. So, and he referenced the definition of thing of value as well. There is a prohibition against giving any public employee or public official a thing of value if you are a principal, a lobbyist, or subordinate of a lobbyist. The definition of a thing of value contains 18 exceptions. So the definition of a thing of value is really in the exceptions, okay? So having something pre-certified, consistent with being a widely attended event, educational function, and economic development function is an exception to the definition of thing of value, okay? So if you have an educational function and we've pre-certified it, it is not a thing of value. So you're permitted to give the public official or public employee that thing, okay? So that's why it matters to you. So I'm not going to go verbatim over these definitions because they're contained in our act, but widely attended event is defined, and it's basically a gathering of more than 12 individuals with a diversity of views. That does not mean that if you invite 30 accountants to a dinner that they don't have a diversity of views, because if you put that many people in a room, they're going to have a diversity of views. So generally, if you have more than 12 people expected to attend, then that would be a widely attended event. Widely attended events can be held outside of Alabama. Educational functions must be within the state boundary. So educational function is a meeting or event, generally what you think of as a conference. It has an agenda, educational activities, etc. And it cannot be a purely social event, neither a widely attended event or an educational function or an economic development function can be just deep sea fishing. You can't just take a bunch of public officials deep sea fishing, even if there's 30 of them, and say it's a widely attended event. So we won't certify that. And then an economic development function is what you think it is, which serves the purpose of a good faith economic development or trade promotion project. So what can be paid for? For widely attended event and educational function, you can pay actual and necessary expenses for the public official or employee and their spouse. So that's obviously very helpful. They have to have meaningful participation, which means they can't just come and exist. They need to be a speaker or a panel participant, present information, perform an appropriate ceremonial function, and it's appropriate to the official duties of their office. Transportation and lodging, same thing for economic development function. The difference is that they don't include spouses for economic development functions. We have a hospitality exception, which is if you'll think reception as you come into a conference. You register at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever, and then they have a dinner that night. That would be something that would be considered an integral part of the educational function or the widely attended event that you're permitted to attend, and that's called hospitality. Again, deep sea fishing, not so much hospitality. It has to be an integral part of the event. And spouses can be included in that. He talked about the food and beverage exception. This is going to be important to you. This will be part of your life, most likely, if you lobby the legislature. But a public employee can receive a $25 meal from a principal, lobbyist, or subordinate of a lobbyist for 6 times from that same person per year, okay? But $25 from the lobbyists, and then, I said principal, but $25 from a lobbyist or subordinate of a lobbyist, $50 from a principal, okay? That is an exception to the thing of value also, is the meal exceptions. And so you don't have to worry about that. As long as you're not doing it to corruptly influence official action, you're just buying them a Chappie sandwich, then it's fine. The pre-certification, it has to be done within more than 10 days before the event. That's an administrative rule. It's not anything that Tom and I can do anything about. If you ask us on day 9, we can't pre-certify. That doesn't mean it's not an appropriate, it doesn't mean it's not an exception to the thing of value if it's an educational event or widely attended event. It just means that we can't pre-certify it. A lot of public officials will call ahead of time and say, hey, this principal has asked me to this event. Has it been pre-certified? Now they can look it up on the website, so those calls are reduced, but they really look for that in order for themselves to have cover about what they're receiving. But an educational event has to be all of these things. As Tom said, we have pre-certifications online that you can look at as a go-by. So if you have any questions about that, just let us know. But what the event is, what the agenda is, the educational informational speeches, and what the public official or employee's participation is going to be. And then the widely attended event is obviously much less. There's much less that has to go into that. There does have to be some informational component in order for it not to just be hospitality, right? Even if you have a phone board that says what the home builders do. All right. So we're going to need to know who's invited. If it's under 50 people, then a sign-in sheet, and then how many people do you expect to attend? And then tell us what you're paying for. What kind of transportation? Are they flying? Are they driving? Are they riding a bus? Maybe eventually the train they would ride. But who it is, whether it's a spouse, the public official, and then, if you'd want to pay attention to whether or not the event is hosted at the Holiday Inn and the public official is put up in the Grand Hotel or something. We want to be comparable. And so then what is the person doing? What is their participation? And integral part, as I said, it can't be standalone, independent from the event. It's got to be in conjunction with the event. All attendees have to be invited and sanctioned by the sponsors of the event. So if you have a golf tournament and everybody's invited to participate, and it's not at the same time that any educational program is going on, that it's supported by the sponsor, then that may be an integral part. But you would always want to ask us that question. As I said, it needs to be 10 days before, and we have them on our website. This is an old picture of the website, but you can find them there. And these are some opinions that that the commission has adopted regarding pre-certifications generally, but this is the stacking expenditures. So how much can be spent on the employee or official is dependent on that person's position. So relative to the person buying it. So when I go to lunch, if I went to lunch with somebody from Auburn University who is the principal and then their lobbyist, I can't get $75 worth of a meal. I can only either get $50 from the principal or $25 from the lobbyist. Okay, so you can't stack those meals or those expenditures. There's no de minimis lobbying. If you're paid to lobby, you're a lobbyist. It doesn't matter how little lobbying you do or how much lobbying you do. And you would have,
Excuse me, apparently there's a lighting problem.
okay, what can I do about that? Vicki, can you close that drake, please?
I think that's probably it.
What is the lighting doing?
They can't see the screen.
Oh, I was going to say, is it washing me out? I'm just kidding.
No.
Nobody's, it's not me. Is that better? Okay, thanks, thanks, Vicki.
Wait, hang on just a minute.
Okay,
I've gotten like 5 texts about it.
okay, I feel like going.
It's whited out. It's like someone is changing the brightness of the picture. Hang on.
I'm really new.
Great.
The difference between a principal and a lobbyist, is the principal like the executive director?
No, the principal is who hires the lobbyist. So if you are the company that hires somebody to go, whether it's a nonprofit or a company that hires somebody to go and lobby on your behalf. Yeah, so, but if you receive any compensation and it's part of your regular job duties to lobby, then, but that's the difference, is the principal is the person paying the lobbyist. Is that better? Do I need to wait still?
Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, they said now he's better.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the thing that I said, I've repeated several times. No sporting or recreational events that are independent from everything else. You can't just go in to entertain public officials and employees. So this is also, I've referenced this, that at the beginning of the conference, or when no other conference activities are taking place, it consists of individuals attending the conference, and when it's been sanctioned by the sponsors, you can have some hospitality included in that. The accurate reporting, this is what Tom was referencing, this is the opinion given, I don't remember who asked it, BCA?
BCA.
BCA, okay. 2018-01 was essentially, if you have a big conference and there's multiple principals or lobbyists contributing to that conference, what are their reporting responsibilities? And the answer is you can have an aggregate sponsorship, but you have to delineate what it is that you paid for. You know, if one sponsor paid $10,000 and one paid $2,500, they have to report that difference. And then we have what everybody refers to as executive branch lobbying, but it's 1.1, it's a definition. And it says specifically that if you are trying to sell goods and services to any branch of state government, then you are a lobbyist, then you are lobbying. But it does not reference municipal and county governments. So if you are trying to sell goods and services to municipal or county governments, you are not a lobbyist, because there's a specific exception in the definition of lobbying or lobbyist that says you are not a lobbyist. So. But if you were doing that for the state government, you do have to register. And that's our website. And then these are Tom's parting thoughts. Tom? Do y'all have any questions about any of that? Okay.
All right, so parting thoughts. And this might be the most helpful part of the whole thing for you. Just remember that if your registration changes, that you've got to update us within 10 days of the change. So if you take on a new client, you've got to report that to us, and you've got to do it within 10 days. Who do you report it to? You report it to Vicki Manning. Communicate with your principal. Most of the problems we have with lobbyists in terms of disclosure, registration, et cetera, come from miscommunication between the principal and the lobbyist. Y'all generally do a very good job about getting your registration in. However, we don't consider you to have registered until your principal confirms that you are representing them. So you need to make sure that your principal knows that they have to confirm back with us. There's not a session that has gone by where we haven't had somebody call over and say that so-and-so is over at the legislature and they're lobbying, and we've checked the website and they're not registered to lobby. I've also failed to find any instance where the lobbyist hasn't filed their registration. What we do find is that the lobbyist has filed his or her registration, but the principal hasn't confirmed it. And one of Vicki's best skills is she generally knows who the slow principals are. And she has said, don't worry, it's coming in. They always file it, the second week of April or whatever. And so she will generally communicate with the principal and make sure they know, but it would help you out enormously, and us too, if you would just communicate with your principal. Remember your quarterly filings. If you have someone else filing them for you, somebody in your office, make sure you review them before you file them. The other problems we have had with lobbyist disclosures are when something is reported incorrectly. And generally, somebody in the office has filled it out, but the lobbyist who may be signing it hasn't reviewed it in detail, or either they had somebody else sign their name to it. So make sure that you review it. The reason that's important is that what you have to disclose as part of your disclosure are expenditures in excess of $250 that are made within a 24-hour period. So if your expenditure at a widely attended event exceeds $250 within a 24-hour period, then you have to disclose that. You also need to remember that all of our pre-certifications are listed on our website. That means anybody in the public, including journalists, can access that and see what you've done. And we have had instances where a journalist has called and said, so-and-so put on a convention at this location, and I've looked, and there's not a room there that doesn't go for less than $250. And they didn't disclose it in their quarterly report. We contact the lobbyist, and they'll say, that was just a mistake. Of course, we will refile. And they get refiled, and then the story is generally that we allowed the lobbyist to correct their filings, and that was, somehow the wrong thing to do. I will tell you that every single time we would rather you correct than have an incorrect filing out there. So we will tell you every time that if you need to correct, you may do so. It would be easier if you would just review it and make sure that if you have to disclose something, make sure it's in the quarterly disclosures. So make sure you eyeball these things before they go out to us. Remember the 10-day rule for pre-certifications. Of course, a pre-certification is our formal approval of an event that a lobbyist or an association wants to provide for public officials or public employees. And you don't have to request pre-certification from us, but if you want pre-certification, you have to request it at least 10 days ahead of time. There's an administrative rule that says that we will not pre-certify an event unless we're given 10 days notice of it. And we have had it happen even this session where somebody has sent it in and said, I'm sorry, I forgot, the event's Wednesday. And we've said, we're not telling you you can't do it, but what we are telling you is that we can't pre-certify that event. It doesn't mean that you're violating the law if you do it. It just means you don't have our stamp of approval. And that stamp is more than just a technical compliance. If we stamp it as pre-certified, then it exempts that activity from the definition of thing of value. If you don't have that pre-certification, then you have to make sure that you have complied with what the code allows in terms of exceptions to the definition of thing of value. But I think it's just much easier if you can, instead of saying, I have reviewed it and there was a diversity of views here, there were at least 12 people invited to it, and this is what we provided to them, none of which is prohibited by the Act. It's just much easier to say, we had it pre-certified by the Ethics Commission, here's the letter approving it. So just remember you've got to request that 10 days ahead of time. And remember to ask questions. If in doubt, call Vicki Manning. Right, I don't see any questions from anybody who is attending. Cynthia, did you have anything else to add?
I do not. I do.
Okay.
I do. Could you please tell them?
No, I'm going to let you tell them. There you go.
For those of you that went directly to the YouTube site to watch this webinar, please go back to our main page at www.ethics.alabama.gov and select Meetings Live Stream and click the Continue button to submit your name and email address. If you do not do this, you will not receive credit for attending this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. All right, so if you don't have any questions, hang on, I think I got one. Vicki, they're saying they clicked out and they want to know how they can get back in.
Just go to the website. Just go to the website, our website. and
Here, just,
click
okay.
Meetings Live Stream.
Wait, okay, come here. Come here.
Do exactly what you just said. If you just go back to our,
Well, the question is that you clicked out, and how can I get back in?
just go directly to our live streams And when it says to learn more, continue, select that button, and then continue again, and it'll give you the acknowledgement page.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I appreciate your attendance here today. I appreciate your attendance online. If you have any further questions, and the person said they got it, so thanks. So if you have any further questions, just remember to follow up directly with our office, Vicki or me, and I hope you all have a good rest of the day.